All right, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this workshop on special student relief for Ukrainian students. Today, we are going to cover information about what is special student relief, to learn everything about what it is, who's eligible for it, what are the benefits, how do you apply. We're also going to talk about severe economic hardship employment, as well as kind of the differences between special student relief, which is for F1 students, and TPS, temporary protected status. And then we'll have some time for question and answers. This session is being recorded and will be posted to UCF Global's YouTube channel after the event for those who weren't able to attend live. So if you're watching on YouTube, welcome as well. So we'll go ahead and just jump right in. I wanted to start by sharing just some information about UCF support resources. I know you've been getting emails from us over the past several weeks about some different resources available at UCF, but I just want to mention them again. So UCF has the Counseling and Psychological Services, CAPS. They provide free and confidential counseling. So with all that's going on, all that might be on your mind, it can be really helpful to talk with someone, and it is confidential and there's no charge. They also offer 24/7 crisis services, so you can always call even after hours to be able to speak with a counselor if you are experiencing a moment of crisis. It's important to know that you're never alone, and there are a lot of people that care about you. So I've listed their contact information, the phone numbers there. Here's the link to their website, and you can find information. They also have like different groups. They've got a lot of other events that are going on. So if maybe you don't want to do individual counseling, there are some other options for you to get connected with CAPS. And it's a really great resource. The other is UCF Student Care Services. So Student Care Services coordinates a lot of different support on campus. And one of the main things that many of our students from Ukraine have been benefiting from is financial assistance. So if you are experiencing financial difficulty, please reach out to UCF Student Care Services to see what type of funding and assistance might be available to you. There's also the UCF Nights Pantry. Where you can get food and other types of like personal care items. They have clothing, everything there that is free for students, and students are encouraged to use it. So please connect with Student Care Services if you're experiencing any financial difficulty. You're always also welcome to reach out to me or UCF Global. We want to make sure that you have the support that you need during these really difficult moments. All right, so let's go on to special student relief, and let's talk about what it is. So basically, special student relief was just announced by the US Department of Homeland Security, and it basically suspends certain regulatory requirements for F1 students. So this only applies to international students who are studying in the US with an F1 visa. And it's given for F1 students who are from parts of the world experiencing emergent circumstances. So emergent circumstances means maybe natural disasters, wars or military conflicts, and national or international financial crises. So special student relief often is announced for countries who have also been designated for temporary protected status. So most recently, apart from Ukraine, Venezuela, for example, Haiti, they were also given special student relief. So it's actually a great benefit for F1 students. So we'll talk about what it means and like how do you get it. So for Ukrainian students, special student relief was just announced last month, April 19th. So if you scan the QR code, it will take you to the Federal Register, which actually talks about what is special student relief. It's like the legal things. There's a lot of text there, but if you want to read it, the QR code will take you there. Why was it announced? So this is straight from the document there. It says DHS has reviewed country conditions in Ukraine. Based on this review and in consultation with the Department of State, the Secretary has determined that an 18-month designation is warranted due to ongoing armed conflict and emergent circumstances described below. And then there is probably a page or two where they describe the conditions which warranted the special student relief announcement. And they were under these categories. So the ongoing armed conflict and human rights abuses, the humanitarian situation, destruction of infrastructure and scarce resources, lack of access to healthcare, and displacement. So this is the reason that the government has acknowledged that has been impacting Ukrainian students. And so this is the reason why they're designating special student relief. So I want to pause there because obviously there's a lot that's happening, and I'm sure it takes a toll not only on you, but also your loved ones. And so I just want to acknowledge that this is not, this is very difficult. And so we want just to express again that we're here for you, and we want to help you to be eligible for any of these benefits through special student relief or the resources at UCF, and that we're here for you, and we really do care, and we know that you might be going through a lot right now. Okay, so who is eligible for special student relief? So to be eligible, you need to meet all of these requirements. And so most of our students will meet these unless they might have been abroad during the time of the announcement, but we'll go through the requirements. So the first requirement is that you need to be a citizen of Ukraine, regardless of which country you were born in. So if you have Ukrainian citizenship, that meets the first eligibility requirement. The next is that you need to have been lawfully present in the United States in F1 status on April 19th, 2022. So were you here in F1 status on April 19th? Be currently maintaining your F1 status. So basically that means you have an active CVIS record, you are enrolled according to the requirements of your program, etc. The other requirement is that you be enrolled at UCF, which is a school that's designated to host international students through the Student Exchange Visitor Program. And the last eligibility requirement is that you must be experiencing severe economic hardship as a direct result of the ongoing armed conflict in Ukraine. So if you meet those requirements, you are eligible for special student relief. So what are the benefits of special student relief? So if you are approved for special student relief, this will allow you to work on campus more than 20 hours. So for the summer, it doesn't make a huge difference because in the summer, all international students can work more than 20 hours on campus in the summer. But comes fall semester or spring semester, this will actually be a big benefit. So this means when you're normally limited to 20 hours per week on campus in the fall and spring, this would allow you to work more than 20 hours. So that can be a great help in terms of getting more money for your living expenses and things like that. So if you are working more than 20 hours per week, it will allow you to enroll less than full time. So this would apply to undergraduate and graduate students only. So students are in our English programs would not be eligible for that part of the special student relief. But for our undergraduate, graduate students, if you're working more than 20 hours per week, you can enroll below full time. And we'll talk about the requirements there in just a moment. It also grants you the ability to work off campus more than 20 hours if you have a work authorization called severe economic hardship employment that's granted through United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, USCIS. So we're going to talk in much more detail about severe economic hardship employment in a few slides, but we'll put a pin in that for now. And then certain eligibility requirements for that severe economic hardship employment are waived because of special student relief. So on-campus employment, let's just kind of summarize it. So the weekly hours you'd be permitted without special student relief, that's same as all F1 students. Summer semester, everyone is permitted to work more than 20 hours per week. With special student relief, that doesn't change. You'd still be able to work more than 20 hours. In fall semester, F1 students are usually limited to 20 hours per week working on campus, but with special student relief, that means you could work more than 20 hours per week on campus. Winter break doesn't change. All students can work more than 20 hours per week. Spring would be the same as fall, normally limited to 20 hours per week, but with special student relief approved, you could work more than 20 hours. Now, the actual hours you get will depend on your on-campus employer. We have in the past seen students who have become eligible for special student relief and have been granted special student relief to work 2 on-campus jobs, and they can get quite a few hours that way. So there's a lot of ways to be able to get your additional hours. So the enrollment requirements. So if you have special student relief approved and you are working over 20 hours per week, undergraduate students can reduce their credit hours to 6 credits. So instead of having to take fall semester 12 credit hours, that means you would only be required to take 6 credit hours. So it's a reduced number of credits that are required. Now, I think most of the students who are here today in the workshop on Zoom are probably current students that are continuing in their program. So summer semester enrollment is only required if summer semester is your first semester or your last semester, meaning you're graduating in the summer, or if you maybe took a break from school and are coming back to UCF with an initial I-20 that was issued for summer. All other times, summer is optional. You're not required to enroll. So fall and spring with special student relief and working more than 20 hours per week, you'd only be required to enroll in 6 credit hours, which could be a huge help. I mean, in terms of tuition costs, as well as being able to balance working with course load. So for our graduate students, basically that reduces to 3 credit hours. So if you have special student relief approved and you're working more than 20 hours per week, that means you'll only be required to enroll in 3 credit hours in the fall and spring. So some additional details about special student relief. The first thing to note is it's not automatic. You have to apply to UCF Global, and you will receive an I-20 that has a special student relief notation on the I-20. So you have to get that I-20 to be considered having received special student relief. You cannot use the special student relief benefits until after you've received that I-20 from UCF Global. And basically that approval for special student relief is entered in your SEVIS record, and it will be printed on your I-20. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, the SSR approval for enrolling below the 12 credits or below the 9 credits for grad students depends on having a job where you're working more than 20 hours per week. So you don't get the reduced course load benefit unless you are working more than 20 hours per week. So how do you apply? And I know I sent everyone an email with some instructions, but just to reiterate them here, just email us. You can email me or the INTL advising@ucf.edu with the following. A statement explaining how you are experiencing severe economic hardship as a direct result of the ongoing armed conflict in Ukraine. That's directly quoted from the requirements of the special student relief. So you just need to be specific and concise, like 1 to 2 paragraphs should be sufficient. And it's helpful to explain, how you or your family have been impacted personally versus maybe just kind of in general how everyone has been impacted. Then you'll need to also send your most recent I-94 and travel history document, which you can download from the Customs and Border Protection website that I've linked here. And then any type of documentation that demonstrates your severe economic hardship. So we'll talk about what that might look like in a minute. So documenting the hardship. So the most important part of that is going to be the 1 to 2 paragraph explanation that you write. In that paragraph, and it's important that you indicate how your primary means of financial support comes from Ukraine. So maybe you are sponsored by your parents, and obviously they might have had a business or jobs that have been impacted or not able to operate because of the situation, or maybe your family has gone to a different country and obviously their financial situation has been impacted by that. So everyone's situation is a little different. So it's just important to explain how you've been impacted. And then the documentation you submit needs to support your explanation. So again, everyone's situation is going to be a little bit different. Our goal here is to help you be eligible for special student relief. We want you to get these benefits, but we just have to make sure that we are following the legal requirements of it. So some examples of documentation that you could use, maybe a bank statement if they're able to obtain it, or your own bank statement, if they have a job termination letter, business closure letter, doctor's notes, hospital bills. I mean, we've received for other things like pictures, news articles, these are just some examples. If you have a hard time obtaining documents, which I know it can be challenging, I've heard from several students that it can be really difficult to get documents, let us know. We will work with you to find a solution to figure out how do we at least document your situation, and we can get creative on that. Our goal is to help you be able to get these benefits. So these are the things that we would need. You just email them to the intladvising@ucf.edu. Also, if you already have an on-campus job and they want you to work more than 20 hours, we can go ahead, you can get an offer letter. So for your on-campus job, the letter that we need is basically the same type of letter that students need when they apply for their social security number. So the letter should contain that information. If you are going to later have apply for severe economic hardship employment, we would need a letter from that, but I know that none of our students have that yet, so I will just leave it up here, but we'll kind of move on with the presentation. So once you email us those documents, we will review them and schedule a Zoom meeting with you. Obviously, we want to talk with you about your special student relief. We want to also make sure that if you want to apply for severe economic hardship employment, which we'll talk about in a minute, that we're helping you with your application and next steps on that. And ultimately, we will be issuing you the I-20 with the special student relief recommendation. So give us a few days from when you email us to set up that meeting. Our goal is to get back to you as quickly as possible. And just remember that special student relief is not automatic. We have to actually issue you an I-20 that has the special student relief approval and endorsement. All right, so let's talk about severe economic hardship employment. So this is a type of employment authorization that's issued by USCIS for international students who are experiencing severe economic hardship due to unforeseen circumstances after they arrive to the United States. So if you're approved, you'll receive an employment authorization document, or EAD. It looks like the one pictured here. And that EAD can be used at any employer for the dates listed on the card. So that means you could work in any job. It does not have to be related to your major. It can be anywhere. You could get a remote job. You could work downtown. You could get a job at Uber Eats. Whatever you want to do, that employment authorization is valid for any employer. So unforeseen circumstances, obviously, I think a lot of them, the unforeseen circumstances we kind of talked about through the special student relief about how Ukraine has been impacted. But typically when students are applying for economic hardship employment, it's because of loss of financial support or loss of on-campus employment without fault on the part of the student, substantial changes in the exchange rate or value of the currency, increases in tuition or living costs, unexpected changes in the financial state of the student sponsor, medical bills, and other substantial and unexpected expenses. So obviously, just alone with the situation in Ukraine that we talked about earlier, Obviously, there's a lot that could fit under those categories, and then individually, your own circumstances, you might have additional ones that you could be eligible for. So like we talked about a few minutes ago, special student relief waives many of the requirements for economic hardship employment. So typically students have to have been in F1 status for an academic year. That requirement is waived. So if you have less than an academic year at UCF, you are still eligible to apply for economic hardship. You do have to show that you're in good academic standing, meaning you're not academically disqualified or dismissed from the university. Typically, students must be enrolled full-time. That requirement is waived if you have special student relief, because part of special student relief is that you can be enrolled part-time. Typically, students need to demonstrate that the employment will not interfere with their ability to maintain full-time enrollment. That requirement is also waived for special student relief recipients, because most will be enrolling less than full-time once they have a job. One of the things you do have to be able to demonstrate is document that the employment is necessary to avoid severe economic hardship due to unforeseen circumstances beyond your control. So by getting this employment authorization, how it will help you make sure that you don't experience really severe economic hardship. And then finally, usually students need to document that on-campus employment opportunities are unavailable or insufficient to meet their needs. That requirement is also waived. So basically, you just, if you've received special student relief, you just need to demonstrate that you're in good academic standing and that this employment is necessary to avoid severe financial hardship. So the application process, first you will want to do the special student relief so that all of those additional requirements are waived for you for the economic hardship application. You will meet with UCF Global Immigration Advisor. We have a checklist of documents on our website under the employment section that talks about what you would need to gather for your application. So we'll meet with you to kind of go through that checklist, review your documents. We'll give you suggestions on the letter that you write to make sure that you're submitting a very strong and solid application to USCIS. We'll also give you an updated I-20 that actually recommends the economic hardship employment, as well as notes your special student relief approval. So that's a very critical piece of the application. So you don't mail anything to USCIS until you have that. Once your application is complete, you will mail it to USCIS, and their processing time is about 3 to 4.5 months. It might vary, might be less, it might be more, but that's kind of the average. And it's important to note that you would not be permitted to work off campus until your economic hardship employment is approved and you are within the dates listed on that card. So don't work off campus until you have it. Some application materials that you will need. There's a USCIS form that you need to file called the I-765. We will help you know how to complete that form. There is a filing fee associated with this of $410. Now, if you're not able to afford the $410, please talk with us about that. There are some options for what's called a fee waiver with the government. It requires an additional application. It can be very difficult to qualify for a fee waiver, but I do believe for many students, we might be able to make a good case for them to get a fee waiver. But the issue with that is it does add additional time onto the processing time. So if the fee waiver is not approved, they'll send your application back to you and you'll need to file again. You would actually need to send in the fee. So it results in more time. But we can discuss that if the don't let the $410 be prohibitive if you feel like this would help your situation. You'll get two 2-inch by 2-inch photos. You can get those like at CVS or Walgreens or the Spot on campus. And then you will actually write a business format letter to USCIS explaining your severe unforeseen financial hardship as a direct result of the ongoing armed conflict in Ukraine, and then explain how receiving the economic hardship employment will help you. So maybe you would use it to help cover your living expenses or put towards tuition or something like that. So be able to explain it. It's important that you draft something before you meet with UCF Global. We can help you refine it, make it a stronger letter, but you'll have to put some initial thoughts on paper or like on a Word document. You'll also need to send in supporting documentation that supports your explanation of your hardship. Again, we can work with you to figure out what would be the best types of documentation for your case. You'll need to get your transcripts, which you can request through your MyUCF. You will actually receive an I-20, like I mentioned, from UCF Global. You'll include a copy of that and a copy of your I-94, your in-travel history, your F1 visa, and your passport. So there's a list of documents, but it's basically what you will need to apply for severe economic hardship. And again, your UCF Global Immigration Advisors will help guide you through this process if you choose to apply for this employment authorization. So before I go into special student relief and TPS, I want to just mention that for many students, especially if you are in a program that requires an internship, many students will need to complete, are planning to, or might already be applying for curricular practical training. So because for the severe economic hardship employment, because the processing time is like we saw, like 3 to 4.5 months around there, even if you were to apply today, that would mean, because today's, we're at the beginning of May, that would mean it wouldn't be until at least August that you would receive the employment authorization. So in the meantime, if you need to work during the summer to earn, living expenses money or money towards tuition, some options in the meantime might be to apply for curricular practical training if you're eligible, find an on-campus job. You're able to work more than 20 hours per week on campus. So if you have questions about what might be better for your particular situation, please reach out to us and we can meet with you and kind of discuss what your best options might be. So let's talk about special student relief and temporary protected status, TPS. So it's important to understand that these are two different benefits. They're completely separate. So if you register for TPS, that will not affect special student relief, SSR, and vice versa. So they don't negatively impact each other. It's important that you register for TPS if you're eligible to do that. The deadline to register is October 19th of 2023, so you do still have some time. UCF Global did host an information session on TPS for Ukraine with a local immigration attorney. That recording is posted on our YouTube channel. So if you have questions about TPS or aren't sure, definitely watch that, and then feel free to reach out if you have additional questions. So let's kind of compare the employment benefits. So under TPS, people who apply for TPS can also apply for employment authorization. So like in the TPS workshop that we did, the attorney explained that if you register for TPS, it does not affect your F1 status. However, if you utilize the employment authorization that you receive from TPS, that would mean you could no longer maintain your F1 status. So if you want to use that benefit, that's fine, but it would also mean you wouldn't be able to keep your F1 status. So for TPS, the cost of applying for the employment authorization through TPS is $410. Again, it's about the same processing time, the 3 to 4.5 months around there. There are no restrictions on the jobs you can do. There's also no weekly hour restrictions on the jobs that you get. Now, for special student relief, there are two types of employment. So the first, on-campus employment, which is just for F1 students. You don't need an EAD, so you can maintain your F1 status while you work on campus. There is $0 cost. You do not have to apply for on-campus employment. It's already part of your F1 status. There's no processing time. It's just once your special student relief is approved, that's when you could work more than 20 hours if it's the fall or spring. The restrictions are you can only work for on-campus jobs. Now, some on-campus employers that hire a lot of international students would be the Recreation and Wellness Center, UCF Dining Services, which is Aramark, the Barnes and Noble Bookstore. I'm just trying to think of some others. And like Barnes and Noble Bookstore that's on campus. Those are all on-campus employers. And there would not be hour restrictions for you because if you had the special student relief approved. For severe economic hardship, it does not invalidate your F1 status. It's something that you can apply for as a benefit of your F1 status. Again, the cost, the filing fee is $410. The processing time, about 3 to 4.5 months. There are no restrictions on the type of jobs you can take and no hour restrictions on the number of hours you can work per week. So that kind of breaks down the different types of employment authorization. So we will end there. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to take those. Feel free to unmute yourself or type them in the chat. I'd be happy to answer.
Good morning.
Hi, yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I am an F1 student at the moment. One of the questions I have is, you said applying for TPS will result in losing the F1 status. Does it mean that I would also lose the ability to file for CPT or OPT in the future?
So applying for TPS, like just registering for TPS, does not impact F1 status at all.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I meant getting, yeah.
And even receiving the employment authorization still doesn't affect F1 status. It's only if you use that employment authorization document from TPS that would mean you could no longer maintain your F1 status. Now there is some disagreement in the legal field about that. UCF, we kind of go with what our attorneys have advised, and they've advised a little more conservatively that using that employment authorization benefit would mean that you could no longer maintain F1 status. So if you were to use the employment authorization from TPS, that would mean you would no longer apply for CPT or OPT because you no longer be F1. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I also have another question. So if I were to get an offer over the summer, say from a company in San Francisco, how would I go about like, what's the legal paperwork for me to be able to get employed? Because that's obviously off campus, but it does align with the STEM major that I have. It's a STEM field. So what would be like? What are the rough steps?
And you said it's for the summer?
Potentially for longer, but
okay.
For now it's yeah.
Well, there's two things. So if it's for the summer, we would want to see if you have already met the academic year requirement for curricular practical training. That would be probably the best way for you to be able to do that job that's directly related to your major this summer. And we have information about CPT on our website, and I'm happy to connect afterwards too if you have additional questions. But CPT would probably be the best way for you to be able to do the internship this summer. You might want to consider if you feel like you meet the requirements for special student relief and the severe economic hardship employment, it might be a good idea to do the severe economic hardship employment, because even though it wouldn't come in time for you to do the internship this summer, if you were going to continue it into the fall, that would allow you to do that internship with just the employment authorization document that you received. And what you'll be able to do is avoid having to take an internship course and paying the tuition for that. So if your program does not have a required internship course, for CPT, students have to be in an internship course. So if there's not a requirement in your program for one, you would enroll in a 1 credit hour internship course through experiential learning. So that would be something you need to do this summer if you wanted to do that job and do CPT. But if you apply soon for economic hardship employment, you might be able to get your employment authorization in time to avoid having to do an internship course. You could use that employment authorization instead to continue that job or internship in the fall or spring, whenever it is.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Great. Well, any other questions before we close out today? All right, well, we will go ahead and end here. If you have questions or if you've watched on YouTube and you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us at UCF Global, INTL Advising at ucf.edu. We are here for you. We want to make sure you understand all the eligibility requirements, how to become eligible and apply for these benefits. So we are here to support however we can. And thank you for joining us today, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.